Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this presentation for Hult International Business School. My name is Darren Lockery, and I'm an Associate Director of Enrollment on our Boston campus for the MBA program. In this presentation, we are going to be examining some of the different ways in which you can fund your graduate degree. And we will be specifically looking at the one-year Global MBA and our master's degree programs, such as the Master of International Business, the Master of International Marketing, and the Master of Finance. We will first start with the investment in your education and discuss this decision as it is a large one to make at this point in your career. Also, we will look at federal loans for U.S. citizens and permanent residents, private loan options, private loans specifically for international candidates, further options for Canadian candidates, and both merit-based scholarships and needs-based grants, which are through Hult International Business School. First, the decision to go back to school is a large decision and it will require a lot of thought. But fortunately, it's an investment in yourself and in your career. And it will require time and money up front, but we do have a statistic that supports that decision to go back to school and specifically to come join us at Hult. And that reason is that we are ranked number 2 by The Economist for return on investment. What this means is that in an average of 2.1 years, our candidates are able to recoup the cost of their degree. This is factoring in the opportunity cost with our one-year model. Many programs are 2 years, and that means that at Hult, in a one-year program, you're able to be back in the workforce and earn that salary much faster than you would in a more traditional 2-year program. And this payback period is also averaging in our starting salary amongst our graduates. For the MBA, the average starting salary is $91,900 US, and for masters, it is $55,500 US. This chart here shows this quick payback period. So again, with Hult ranked number 2, and you can see that with only 2.1 years that it takes to recoup your investment, that is certainly a much more appealing payback period than several other programs. Next, I would like to look at some federal loan options. So federal loans can be used for U.S. citizens, for permanent residents, and also for eligible non-U.S. citizens, such as asylees or refugees. And this application process is for receiving loans through the U.S. government. Most of our candidates that are from the U.S. or are permanent residents are eligible for FAFSA loans as long as they are not currently in default of a prior student loan. One thing to note is that we are only able to use FAFSA loans on our Boston and our San Francisco campuses. So this is only for candidates that are planning to start the programs and spend the first 8 months of their year in Boston or in San Francisco. Also, a federal direct loan is in the amount of $20,500 US. And this loan is disbursed to the school in 3 payments in September, January, and May. Interest will accrue throughout the school year, and you can actually start the application process at www.fafsa.ed.gov. One thing to make sure of is that any site that you're visiting to apply for these federal loans, make sure that it has .gov at the end of the address. And the reason being, there are some other sites out there that do try to charge you for this application process, but FAFSA actually stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you should not have to pay an application fee. Also, you can call FAFSA directly, or you can call our Director of Financial Aid, Karen Van Dyne, whose contact details I will include at the end of our presentation. In the case that you need an additional loan, you can apply for a Federal Plus loan. So this Federal Plus loan is customizable, and it can cover the remaining tuition cost and even go over some of your living expenses or all of those living expenses. And you can apply at www.studentloans.gov. The U.S. Federal Plus loan is credit based, so you will need to pass a credit check through the application process. The good news is that it is not looking at your credit score, but is actually looking at negative hits against your credit. So unless you have bankruptcy, foreclosure, or charge-offs on your account, you should be eligible to receive a Plus loan. So even someone with very little credit or no credit, for some of our younger candidates who may be fresh out of undergraduate, you may still be eligible for a Plus loan. If you do have some hits on your credit and are not able to get the Plus loan yourself, you can have an endorser, which is essentially a co-signer, and this person can co-sign your loan for you. Once the application is completed and you have confirmed your attendance to the program, our director will contact you with your financial aid award, and she will work with you throughout the loan process. It is great to make small payments while you're still in school, if possible. And also, all loans will flow through Massachusetts. So Hult is listed in Massachusetts. Even if you're attending the San Francisco campus, just note that we will have our Massachusetts location listed there. Here we have our FAFSA code, and also, again, loans are dispersed once school starts. Another options that our candidates do consider are private loans. Some people choose private loans over federal loans if, for example, they're attending a non-US campus like London or Dubai, or if they're using the direct loan from the federal loans and then a private loan to cover the remainder of tuition. If you're not a US citizen or permanent resident but do have a co-signer who is, this could be another great option. Some of the most common lenders that we work with are Sallie Mae, Citizens Bank, Discover, Wells Fargo, and then we also have several local lenders. The loan can cover all of tuition and your living expenses, and these private loans will be dispersed entirely at the beginning of the year, so make sure that you budget accordingly. Interest rates vary by credit and the repayment plan chosen. So if small interest payments are made while attending Hult, the interest rate is lower than if the whole loan is deferred. And of course, this is the recommended way to pay back those loans. One further option for our international candidates that are looking at private loans is to, beyond local lenders, you can also speak with your enrollment director about GoEd student loans. And this loan is specifically for MBA candidates. A co-signer will be needed, and your interest rate will vary from 5 to 8%. One further option is the Empower financing. And Empower is for non-US citizens with no US credit history and no co-signer is required. It's a loan that is currently only accepted on our Boston campus and can cover up to $25,000 US based on the candidate's total indebtedness. But the funding model for Empower is based on the concept of micro-lending. So the idea is that we are able to help international students get that last bit of tuition coverage or living expenses needed to make attendance a reality. So at Hult, we really do like this option for our international candidates, as for some students who may otherwise not be able to join us for the program, this does make it possible. The interest rate can vary from 8 to 14%, and there is a 5% origination fee. We do have a lot of Canadian candidates coming to Hult. So fortunately, depending on your province, there might be some options for Canadian candidates, as the Canadian government can actually provide institutional funding if those students still have some available from after the completion of their undergraduate, if all of that institutional funding hasn't been used. Hult will certify a private loan from any bank of your choice. And for the institutional funding, I recommend checking to see if your province offers assistance for international programs. We have worked with students from Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, Saskatchewan, and other provinces that do have these different options. And OSAP from the Ontario Student Assistance Program is probably one of the most common ones that we see come to Hult. And this can cover a small portion of out-of-country tuition. And here's the address to apply. For merit-based scholarships, scholarships may be awarded to candidates whose profile matches our requirements. Scholarships are awarded based on an applicant's experience and their overall profile. So as this is such, Hult will award the scholarship only after you have completed your entire application. So there's no way for us to know how much scholarship you may be eligible for until you have completed the application process. Competition does increase as the admission cycle and the year progresses, so it's always recommended to apply early. And in order to apply, you must submit a 300-word essay for your scholarship of choice. Here are some examples for the MBA and the master's. We have Academic Excellence Scholarship, which is dependent on a GMAT or GRE score and or your GPA if you're a master's candidate. We also have our Global Professional, Social Impact, Entrepreneurial Impact, Senior Leaders, Women in Business, and Future Leader scholarships. And these are connected to your professional background and accomplishments that you have achieved both in your educational and your professional careers thus far. We also have needs-based grants, and one common question that we receive is, can international candidates apply for needs-based grants? And the answer is yes. At Hult, we actually award grants and scholarship for any eligible candidates, regardless of your nationality. So if you are from outside of the US, we would certainly encourage you to look into applying for grants. They are awarded based on qualifications that are outlined on a financial aid form that you must complete along with your application. And similar to scholarships, we do award grants after candidates have completed the entire application. Finally, here are some helpful tips for just thinking about this investment in the education and planning ahead. First, one great thing to know is the tuition payment timeline, as this is for any tuition that is not covered by loans and will come from the candidate directly. Payments will be made typically in 3 installments in 90, 60, and 30 days before the program's start date in September. There is a 2 installment option with 1 payment in June and 1 in December, but do note that a fee is incurred if you choose the 2 installment option. Budget as best as you can while you are in school, especially if you are going to be using personal savings or if you're using a private loan that is given first to the candidate before those tuition payments are made to the school. It's really important for you to look at the 12 months that you have ahead of you and be able to budget accordingly. Tuition and fees go directly to Hult, and then living expenses need to be factored separately. Housing will actually be one of your biggest considerations. So there are a couple of ways that you can reduce the cost for the year. One is to find roommates. We connect incoming students with one another via Facebook. We also have different events where incoming students will get to meet each other prior to matriculation in September. So it's always great if you can make some of those contacts and find 1 or 2 other people that you might be able to live with to cut down on housing costs. It's also helpful to know your neighborhoods and the transportation options available in each of our cities, depending on where you're planning to enroll. A lot of this information can be found on MyHult, which is a website for accepted students. And this will give you great information on where some of our students have found great affordable housing, where they tend to go year after year, as we do work with several students each enrollment cycle. So we do notice some trends and are more than happy to share those helpful tips. It's also recommended that you start your search early so that you are prepared. And finally, do factor in expenses prior to the start date, as just looking at starting classes on day one in September, your fees don't necessarily start there. You may, in terms of moving, have some moving costs associated with your trip to a new city. And also, you may need to account for a security deposit or first month, last month of rent, depending on what type of apartment you do end up moving into. Finally, for any additional questions, it's always recommended that you contact your enrollment director or Karen Van Dyne, who is the Director of Financial Aid at Hult. Karen has 15 years of experience working with candidates from around the world, and her expertise is in federal and private loan options. So she will be your contact for all loan matters. And as you can see here, we have her contact details. And as always, please feel free to visit us at www.hult.edu for further information. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, this is Darren from Hult International Business School.